So, Brazil 23. That was quite an event. Um, a lot of stuff to unpack. Um, I mean, good race. I thought once Max got in the lead, maybe a little predictable. But the rest of what was happening was certainly interesting. Um, Simple breakdown of the results. Verstappen again, um, really dominant. Um, winning. I don't know. Where again? Like sounds like a broken record. Where's the end of it? When will it stop? Who is going to break the streak? In terms of genuine pace, not like at Singapore where you can know that they're off their game. When is another team going to step up and beat Red Bull outright on pace? Don't know. We'll see. Um, Lando, great drive. I mean, that first lap move was great. I mean, talking 60 second. Um, had a look at Verstappen at one point. I don't think it was really on, but it was. I mean, it was worth a shot. He could have pressured him, and maybe he would have made a mistake. Although he's not really known for making those type of mistakes, but worth a shot. And Lando was not only a great start to gain those positions, but he was smart enough that once he made the attempt and it didn't work, he didn't try to kill his tires trying again and again and again. He kind of settled for the second place and let the race develop. And, perhaps he could see another opportunity later in a round of pit stops or another safety car or something like that. So I think he was smart. He's maturing well as a driver because he has a good amount of experience, but he's still a fairly young guy. And I thought it was a very well measured drive from Norris and fast. Again putting a big gap um, to the rest of the field. So overall, pretty good. I mean, McLaren is looking extremely strong. Very unfortunate what happened with Piastri there. Not really any fault of his own. Mind you, if he had qualified better, he probably wouldn't have been involved in what happened, but still, that was obviously out of his control. Haas hit him in his back, broke the wing. I mean, they got it fixed, but not fully, I think. Similar to what happened with Ricardo. Wing got damaged, couldn't continue. Or they continued, but not 100% clearly. I have never made a secret of it. I'm a, unrepentant Alonso fan. Brilliant drive to third place. Welcome return to Aston Martin as well. I think what they did there was maybe go back to the older race setup. I'll comment on that a little further down the line. But yeah, great race from Aston Martin because Stroll was there as well. Give credit where credit is due. I think he finished fifth. It's a great result. Perez, decent run again for about third or the fourth race now. He's kind of finding his feet. Fourth place is not bad. Fantastic battle with Alonso. Chose his moment to pass carefully. Made the pass stick, but he just ran a little deep a couple of corners after, and Alonso, being Alonso, took advantage of that. I mean, just the brilliance of it is, as I said, I'm a fan, and that just had me screaming, Ferrari, wow. It just sounds like a broken record, doesn't it? Let's talk about what happened to Leclerc after, but let's just deal with the finishers for now. Sainz, I think, had to drive well to finish where he did. He was complaining about gearbox downshifting problems. He was complaining about clutch problems. I don't think the car was on point at all this weekend, and he did well to finish where he did. Made some good passes. Alpine, wow. I mean, Gasly, I think, drove probably the race of the year for him. And I think they finished, what was it, 10th, I think, as well, with Ocon. I think Gas, so 2 Alpine points. I think that's great, great result. And beating, Mercedes as well. I think Gasly beat Hamilton, put a pass on towards the end. So that's fantastic result. Give credit where credit is due again. Hamilton, 8th place. Again, we'll expand a little more on him and Russell down the line. But I would say he was probably lucky to not lose another couple of places. I think if Yuki had made some of the mistakes he made earlier in the race, he would have been on a threat. As it was, Yuki himself drove a but he had a bit of a mixed race. He ended up with a good position, finishing in the points, and during the race had very, very strong points. But he also made a lot of mistakes. He made a lot of errors, seemingly unforced, not like in overtaking. You just approaching a corner, misjudge his braking, or go a little too wide before he turned in and put a wheel on the grass, different things like that. You get the feeling that he would do well with I don't want to use the word therapist, but a more like a life coach. He has good driving skills, and I think he has a good driver mentality. He's very, he's aggressive when he needs to be, but he needs to chill in some other areas. I think he needs to be able to be focused a little more, and I think he'll actually be a good driver because he is fast when he needs to be fast. And that was a really good result. And I think, again, as I said previously, AlphaTauri is clearly on an upward trajectory. They're consistently giving good results now. So that's basically the points paying position. That's 10 because Alpine made up the 10th with Ocon. Overall, I think the highlight of the day, the race for me, was the battle with Alonso and Perez. Again, fantastic battle. I think, Perez is such a conundrum because I still feel that he doesn't deserve the place. You almost get the feeling that if it was somebody else driving, maybe they would have made that pass on Alonso's stick and they would have, gotten the podium. Because he just can't seem to get it together. Even when he has a good race, it's like there are always these little provisos. He has a good race, but he could have done better. At the end of the day, he's driving the RB19. Is he going to necessarily beat Max? No, because I don't think he's as good as Max. But I don't think you're going to find too many people sitting in that car that are going to be as good as Max either. I mean, I don't buy into the hype that, 10 drivers on the grid can, if they got the RB, could beat Max. Nonsense. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not a Max fan. I've never pretended to be one. But he is fast right now and is probably the fastest. I don't see anybody else going in that car and beating him. No way. Maybe matching him or pressuring him, but not beating him. And Perez certainly isn't going to do that. And whereas there is merit to the second driver argument, I believe anyway, in Formula One, that you don't need two alpha males, so to speak, in the same team because you just inevitably create problems for yourself. You need a second driver who's not as fast as your lead driver. It allows the lead driver to win. But the second driver has to be able to perform when he needs. He needs to be able to step up. He needs to set a pole once in a while. He needs to win a race once in a while. And certainly, he needs to bring in the points consistently for the team. Perez is just not fitting that role. Even when he has good weekends, still not fitting that role. He is not, a number one car material. He just isn't. I think Ferrari is just lurching from one disaster to the other. I mean, what on earth was that with Leclerc and the hydraulics? I mean, I think, as I recall, Sainz had a hydraulic failure in a previous race. Leclerc said it wasn't that, but the same thing. But I don't know if that's been assessed or if he would even be willing to acknowledge that they would have had the same problem successively. Because there's clearly something wrong with them. The overheating yesterday, getting the cooling thing wrong. Today, gear downshifts giving them problems. hydraulic failure. It's just too unreliable. F1 has progressed to a point where you expect a level of reliability, especially from the top teams. And frankly, they're just not delivering. These kind of mistakes. I mean, you remember they had a fuel issue where you couldn't even take the start a few races back. Crazy, crazy, crazy. That Ferrari is just, I don't know, madness. It's just madness on top of madness. This race, mind you, had a pretty high attrition rate. A number of cars dropped out, whether by accident or unreliability. But so the attrition rate was high, but that's not an excuse for Ferrari at all. The Aston Martin. So I have a feeling that where Aston went wrong in the earlier part of the year, or say the midpoint of the year, is they were encouraged by the successes that they had, and it led them to a level of maybe a little overconfidence that they started to then experiment, and they went in some wrong directions rather than just continuing to refine the package that they had and gradually build up and improve it. I think they got greedy and said, listen, if we get in these third places all the time, let's just make a big change and see if we can win. It doesn't necessarily work that way. And I think the fact that the last meet, I think they went back to the old setting, and I think this time is the same thing. They didn't run the car with the previous upgrades. What I think they did was just tweak and refine the earlier part of the year settings, and it worked. The car is competitive again. So I think maybe that's obviously I'm just speculating, but I think that played a role. I think they just got a little too greedy, made too big a change because they wanted to win. They didn't look at it from an evolutionary standpoint in that, hey, we have this design, it's working, let's gradually improve it and see where we can make some steps. McLaren and Norris, I just want to again say fantastic drive. Norris, I think, although I think Alonso probably deserved the drive of the day, I would say Norris did well enough that he probably could have gotten it as well. He was in the, even though he did eventually get it, I probably would have voted for Alonso, but I wouldn't hold it against him to get it, Norris, because he drove really, really good. He's the only guy right now who seems willing to take it to Max, and I think that's to his credit. The accident at the start with the two Haas and Albon. Boy, I guess I have to say that's a racing incident. I'm inclined to think that the Haas on the left, which I think was Hulkenberg, might have come over a little too much, but and obviously the one in the middle, which was Magnussen, he couldn't go over because Albon had a great start and was making up what I could consider to be a wow pass if it had worked. He couldn't go over, and it ended up just being a sandwich, and you just have this kind of pinball effect where you bounce off one. And I mean, that was pretty much a disaster because, boy, I mean, he took out all the other people as well. Ricciardo and Piastri, their race was basically ruined out of that same incident. So that was a bad one. I find those guys at the back, when they fight is like to the death. I think there's nothing you can really do about that, but I just find them to be a bit unruly in the midfield and towards the back. Sometimes desperation, but it's getting closer to the end of the year as well. Every point counts. Everybody's under pressure. I would say that I kind of leaving Mercedes for last. I don't want this channel to devolve into some kind of Merc bashing situation, and because that's not really the intention. And as I said before, even though I'm not a fan of Mercedes or Hamilton, I do believe in giving credit where credit is due. And when I see them doing well, I actually say they do well. And I think if anybody is going to be fair in how they critique me, I give Hamilton credit where his credit is due. This time around, man, I don't know. I think they were just upside down. Um, I have raised it before as a speculation, but it's starting to kind of, in my eyes anyway, materialize that the development that they made, that big step, which happened before Austin, I don't think it was really that much of a step. Now that you're seeing it materialize, for that floor to work, it's obvious that the car has to be run very low. When it runs low, it's illegal. There are rules that prevent that. When you run it at a normal height, they're nowhere. The car is sliding around like crazy. The tire deg is insane because it's sliding, it's killing the tires. And you either have to crawl around like what Hamilton was doing through the earlier middle part of the race where Verstappen, where Norris and those guys were putting on like 8-10 seconds on him or whatever. Alonso was like 10-15 seconds ahead of him at one point. That's crazy because what that causes is to try to mitigate against the sliding. What they ended up doing was running a massive wing. Now, to try to, claw back a little of the downforce that they've lost from the floor because they're running the car high. But guess what that massive wing causes? No straight line speed, which is why everybody was driving around them on the streets, right? You can't get something for nothing. I believe that Mercedes has just totally dropped the ball. I mean, I see where they just lost the main technical guy, that guy, Mike Elliott. That might be by design. I don't know if him and James Allison are not agreeing. I mean, they just hired James Allison back for this year, and he has his own ideas, obviously, and maybe that's why Elliott had to go. If that's so, that's so. But it's bad timing because I can tell you that if Mercedes does not hit the ground running in 24, they are doomed for another year of beaten, straight up beaten, right? Because McLaren is on it. And I expect a couple other teams also to be on it, right? Think about this, Mercedes was beaten by their customer teams. Aston Martin and McLaren are beating Mercedes with their own engines. It is obvious that it's the chassis that's the problem. The chassis and the air is hopeless, and it's literally pushing the drivers to the brink. The drivers are now getting frustrated. You can hear the frustration in Russell's voice. You can hear the frustration in Hamilton's voice, and you can see the team somewhat cracking. I mean, I don't know if they're protecting Hamilton, why they didn't make Russell pass a little earlier. I mean, eventually he faded because the engine was gonna probably fail anyway because they had a high oil temperature problem, but they wouldn't have known that. And so why wouldn't they have let Russell pass at the midpoint where he obviously had better pace? That don't make no sense. So they're making bad decisions. Again, their pit stops were just marginal. I think they had a 2.9 and a 3.1. That's not bad pit stops, but that's not competitive with Red Bull and McLaren. And I touched back on that thing that Toto had said about, because we have a good engine, we weren't stressing over pit stops. Bro, Mercedes is just not getting their act together. And if you're going to tell me that you can only get good results if you run the car illegally, then you're not doing anything, right? You're failing at your design. So, it just don't make sense. And then you have Hamilton coming on publicly in slate in the W14, which he did the same thing with the W13 last year. It's just not a good look from either the driver's side or the team side. He's saying, boy, I can't wait to see the back of the W14 and desperate for the year to be over. I understand why he's saying it, but it's not a good look. That's not a professional way of looking at it. That's not a good image to be presenting. I don't know. I think I watched an interview with Toto shortly after the race. I mean, the man looked like I don't know, him looked stressed. His hair was untidy. His voice was... I mean, this dude was... You can see that he's stressed, literally. It's like they don't know where to turn. They literally... It's like in Jamaica, we have this expression, everywhere you turn, Makajuki. That is literally how, to me, Toto looks at the moment. That he literally does not know where to turn to get a good result. I need to see a turnaround in Mercedes. I need to see a competitive Mercedes next year. F1 needs that. Mercedes is a massive, massive team. The man who is a 7-time world driving champion, um, world drivers champion, is their lead driver. That we need to see those people at the point, at the front of the grid. Not they can't necessarily win everything, obviously, because Red Bull is on par. You know, Red Bull is wiping the floor with everybody. But I need to see them competitive. I can't. Not, how is Alpine passing them? How is that possible? How is it possible for UK to be threatening to pass them if he had a few more laps? Crazy, right? Mercedes, you need to step up. This is not acceptable. Um, that's kind of the end of my Mercedes rant. Um, Looking forward to Las Vegas. Once we see a little more of that track in the coming week, maybe I'll do a little interim video of that to prepare. We'll see. Not sure. It depends on how much information is available. But street circuits are often throw a lot of spice into the mix. A lot of things tend to happen on street circuits. It's going to be a really cold track because it's going to be at night. So in the desert, which is freezing essentially, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting tire issues that will arise there in terms of cold on the outlaps and stuff like that. On the other hand, I think it might also kind of similar to Mexico throw in a few unexpected results because the conditions are kind of different from. It might just kind of work in a way that it favors some of the lesser teams. Will be interesting to see. So I'm looking forward to the Vegas thing. I hope it's not too. This might be a hope that is misplaced because looking at what happens in Miami and so on, I'm hoping it won't be excessively cheesy, with the typical American stuff. But we'll see. The most important thing is what happens on track, and I hope it's a good race. So let's see how that works out.